Shalom, Kala Yahawah, Bahasham, Yashayah, Bahasham, Radash. Double honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect, who the house of David reborn again in this generation. And Shalom to the 130 Yashayah, who today are known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who before losing our true heritage, we were known as, and still are, the true Hebrew Israelites of the Holy Bible. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about Hanukah, or what is also referred to as the Feast of Dedication, or the Festival of Lights. But before we get into what Hanukah is and who actually this holiday is for, let's go and read about where you could find the Feast of Dedication, or Hanukah, in the actual Bible, right? Because one thing, during this upcoming holiday season, right, this pagan holiday season, the world is on its way to celebrate so-called Christmas, right, in the belief that it is the commemoration of the birth of the Messiah, which it is not, right? The Christmas holiday, December 25th, venerates and celebrates the birth of Tammuz, who is supposedly King Nimrod of Genesis chapter 13, in the reincarnation. Okay, he is a wicked person, and basically all paganism, for the most part, worships him or his wife in one way or another, and Christmas is no different. Now, that being said, let's go and read about in John 10 and 22, when the Messiah himself was actually set to celebrate Hanukah, right? This is John 10 and 22. And it was at Jerusalem, the Feast of Dedication, and it was winter. And Yahawashi walked into the temple of Solomon's porch. Then came the Jews round about him, and said unto him, How long dost thou make us to doubt? If thou be the Messiah, tell us plainly. And Yahawashi answered them, and I told you, and ye believe not. And works that I do in my Father's name, they bear witness of me. Right? And you see, so in this time, the key here is that during this time when Yahawashi was in Jerusalem, he was there and he kept the Feast of Dedication, right? And this also can be used to verify and validate the Apocrypha, which holds the first and second Maccabees books, right? And the Maccabee books, if you're unaware of what they are, it's actually the story or the records of when Judas Maccabeus and his brothers, the other Maccabean brothers, basically fought off the Greek army, right? The Greek invasion, and took back the temple and re-cleansed it, right? We're actually going to go through that a little bit after this little part I'm going to talk about right now, and we're going to see how in the book of Maccabees, how the temple was defiled by these Greeks, which today you would refer to them as the modern day Caucasians, right? During this time, they were calling themselves the Greeks, right? Because in fact, Alexander the Great came through from Macedon and had conquered the Japhetic Greeks, right? The people who you would know today as the Samoans, the Tungans, the Fijians. Those were the original Greeks of the time, right? But what happened is that the Macedonians, the Edomites at those times, they came down through the power of Alexander the Great, and before him his father Philip. They had come and systematically they had infiltrated the Greek Empire, and they themselves started to call themselves the Greeks. And this is why it refers to in the book of Maccabees, it refers to Alexander and his father as Greeks and Macedonians. Okay, but let's get on to Hanukah and what is it, right? Like I said again, it's referred to as the Feast of Dedication, right? And also the Festival of Lights, right? It commemorates the victory of 164 BC that Yahawah gave to Judas Maccabeus and his brothers over the Greek Emperor Antiochus and the heathen Seleucid army, right? And Seleucid, if you're unaware, is like the Iranian area, or modern day Iran, right? Because when Alexander the Great died, his 4 generals split up the empire which Alexander had conquered. Seleucus basically took the Iranian, or the Eastern Empire, right? Basically modern day Iran, and that is referred to as the Seleucid Empire, right? Well, continuing, it says, who then rededicated the temple to Yahawah, right? And the prayer, if you want to kind of get into, just reading a prayer. Now, this isn't a mandate. This is just something that's, it's a good prayer to recite, if you're going to be holding the ritual of Hanukah, right? The prayer goes, blessed are you, Yahawah, our power, ruler of the universe, who made miracles for our forefathers in those days at this time. Blessed are you, Yahawah, our power, ruler of the universe, who has kept us alive, sustained us, and brought us to the season. Blessed are you, Yahawah, our power, ruler of the universe, who has sanctified us with your commandments and commanded us to kindle the lights of Hanukah. And again, right here where it says Yahawah, you could always, you should add in Yahawah, Bahasham, Yashayah, right? Because that's how you properly call upon the Most High Father's name, okay, through His Son. Now, we're going to go ahead and read some scriptures that talk about how the temple was originally made abominable. But before we do that, let's go ahead and just go through the lighting of the menorah, right? Now, one thing you're going to notice is that this menorah isn't the 7 stick menorah, right? It is the 9 stick, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? And why is that? Because you're celebrating 8 days, which the Lord, we've been commanded to keep this festival for, okay? Now, there's also Jewish fables that say that there was a lamp that was lit, and actually it's not a Jewish fable; it's recorded, right? But it is a smaller portion to that story of why it's eight days, right? But the thing is that there was a little bit of oil given to us in a lamp that we used to light the menorah, but that little bit of oil lasted 8 days, right? It's lucky if I said that wrong, but that's why we're celebrating 8 days, okay? But let's go ahead and read real quick the events which led up to the Greeks when they came in, these Edomites, and profaned the temple. We're going to read this whole thing here, right? It says, this is 1 Maccabees 1:51. In the self same manner wrote he to his whole kingdom, and appointed overseers over all the people, commanding the cities of Judah and to sacrifice city by city. Then many of the people were gathered unto them, to wit every one that forsook the law, and so they committed evils in the land, and drove the Israelites into secret places, even wheresoever they could flee to succor. Right? And this is when that evil, Antiochus, he basically had written laws, man. Basically, he had made decrees that the Israelites were no longer to keep our customs. We couldn't, hold Hanukkah. We couldn't hold the things that we were commanded to do. Well, at this time, Salaki, it wasn't Hanukkah because this hadn't come. But we couldn't hold the Sabbaths. We couldn't hold other things that we were commanded to do, right? We had to become like the Greeks, right? Because that's one thing that Esau does in his empire, right? When he brings people in to his empire, he wants them to assimilate, to become like him, right? But that's not what we are to do, right? We have been commanded by our power, Yahawah, Bahasham, Yashayah, to be separate, right? To be holy, to be excluded from what these other heathens do, right? And in this case here, the emperor didn't want this to be done, right? He wanted us to conform. Well, this is the point here that what happened. It says 54. Now, the 15th day of the month Keslev, or Keslu, in the 145th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar and builded altars throughout the cities of Judea in every side, right? So at this point, these demons, they basically wanted to basically unsanctify Jerusalem and remove all the places of worship from our people. So what did they do? They set up these altars. They sacrificed pigs upon the Holy of Holies. They did all these abominable things to make, like it says here, to make the abomination of desolation, right? It made the temple abominable, so that way the spirit of the Most High fled from there, man. So let's continue. And when they had, it says, and burnt incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. And when they had rent in pieces the books of the law, which they found, right? Because see, these Edomites, they didn't want us to even read the Bible. They burnt them with fire. And whosoever was found with any the book of the testament, or if any committed the law, the king's commandment was that they should be put to death, right? So you see, during this time, we were not permitted to keep our laws, right? And that's ultimately coming back in this time, man. In one way or another, these devils eventually are going to make it a crime to read the Bible out in public, right? And it's going to get to the point where anybody reading any type of scriptures are going to be seen as possible terrorists and whatnot, right? Well, eventually in the scriptures, it talks about how Judas won back the temple and was able to reclaim it. Let's read that now. This is 1 Maccabees 4:36. Cast them down with the swords and them that love thee, and let all those that know thy name praise thee with thanksgiving. So they joined battle, and there were slain of the host of Yashayah's about 5,000 men. Even before them were they slain. Now when Yashayah saw his army put to flight, and the manliness of Judas' soldiers, and how they were ready either to live or die valiantly, he went to Antiochia and gathered together a company of strangers, and having made his army greater than it was, he purposed to come again to Judea. And here's the point. Then said Judas and his brethren, behold, our enemies are discomfited. Let us go up to cleanse and dedicate the sanctuary. You see that? So right here is the point where Judas and the Maccabean brothers basically took back the temple and were able to re-cleanse it, right? It says 37. Upon this, all the host assembled themselves together and went up to Mount Zion. And when they saw the sanctuary desolate, and the altar profaned, and the gates burned up, and shrubs growing in the courts as in a forest, or in one of the mountains, yea, and the priest chambers pulled down, they rent their clothes, and made great lamentations, and cast ashes upon their heads. Let's continue reading. It says, and fell down flat to the ground upon their faces, and blew an alarm with the trumpets, and cried towards heaven. Then Judas appointed certain men to fight against those that were in the fortress until he had cleansed the sanctuary. So he chose priests of blameless conversation, such as had pleasure in the law, who cleansed the sanctuary and bare out the defiled stones into an unclean place. And when, as they consulted what to do with the altar of burnt offerings, which was profaned, they thought it best to pull it down, lest it should be a reproach to them, because the heathen had defiled it. Wherefore they pulled it down, right? And this is talking about how these heathens killed and sacrificed pigs and other abominable animals on this altar, man. So these priests, they were going through and they were giving it basically a spiritual scrub down, man, re-cleansing the temple. Continuing, 46, and laid up the stones in the mountain of the temple in a convenient place until there should come a prophet to show what should be done with them, right? And because you see, at this time, the Lord wasn't basically speaking to Israel directly in that manner, right? Because the Lord always would speak through some sort of prophet, right, to give the words and commandments of what should be done. At this time, there was only the priests that were left, and they were basically just following the laws that they had been given from the scriptures. And the Maccabean brothers at this time would have been the closest thing Israel had to kings at this time, right? Because there was no anointed king, right? The Zedekiah was the last king who had his eyes put out and sons murdered by the Babylonians before the southern kingdom got taken out to Babylon, right? And since then, there's been no king over the northern kingdom or the southern kingdom, that is being until Yahawashi showed up on the scene, right? But then even at that time, he wasn't even considered to be the rightly set up king, but in fact he actually was, right? He is going to be the immortal king, right, over all of Israel, right? And underneath him is going to be King David, or the man that you would refer to as King Mashah, right, who came back in our time in the reincarnation. Well, let's go and continue reading. And said, over 47, then they took the whole stones according to the law and built a new altar according to the former, and made up the sanctuary and the things that were within the temple, and hallowed the courts, right? Basically made them holy again, right? Cleanse them, burnt incense and basically cleanse them and declared the Lord's name, right? They made also new holy vessels, and into the temple they brought the candlestick, right, the menorahs, and the altar of burnt offerings and of incense, and the table. And upon the altar they burned incense, and the lamps that were upon the candlesticks were lit, that they might give light in the temple. Furthermore, they set the loaves upon the table and spread out the vials, and finished all the works which they had begun to make. Now, on the 25th day of the 9th month, which is called the month Keslu, is the 148th year, they rose up betimes in the morning, and offering sacrifice according to the law upon the new altar of the burnt offerings which they had made. Look at what time and what day the heathen had profaned it, even in that was it dedicated with songs, citrons, and harps, and timbrels, and all the people fell upon their faces worshiping and praising Yahawah Bahasham, God of heaven, who had given them good success. And so they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days, and offered burnt offerings and gladness, and sacrificed the sacrifice of deliverance and praise, right? And here, check this out. This is why well, let's read this real quick. It says, and they decked also the forefront of the temple with crowns of gold and with shields, and the gates of the chambers were renewed, and hang doors upon them, right? Because you see, so right here, if you're looking into decorating your house to celebrate Hanukkah, this is what you should consider, man. Put up little crowns, gold crowns, and shields as the decorations, right? That's what you should be doing, instead of hanging up stockings on chimneys, or wreaths and mistletoe. See, these are the things that we should be doing if you do want to decorate your house, that is, right? Me myself, I don't really decorate my house. I just set up the 9-candle menorah, and and I just light candles, and that's it, and that's how I keep it, right? it says, thus was there very great gladness amongst the people, for that the reproach of the heathen was put away. Moreover, Judas and his brethren, with the whole congregation of Israel, ordained that the days of the dedications of the altar should be kept in their seasons from year to year by the space of 8 days, from the 25th day of the month Kislev, with mirth and gladness. That right there is the key, with mirth and gladness. At that time also they builded up the Mount of Zion with high walls and strong towers round about, lest the Gentiles should come and tread it down, as they had done before. And they set there a garrison to keep it, and fortified Beshurah to preserve it, that the people might have a defense against Idumea. Right? There you go. Because even though it was the Greeks who had conquered, who had came in, they're, calling them plain out who they are, right? Edom, right? That's because Idumea is the Greek way of saying Edom, okay? Now, back here to the Hanukah cutout, man. Now, as it told you in the scriptures, man, it says, now upon the same day, this is 2 Maccabees 10:5, now upon the same day that the strangers profaned the temple, on the very same day it was cleansed again, even the 25th day of the same month, which is Kislev or Kislev. Okay, now Kislev or Kaslu is the way that you would refer to the 9th month of the lunar Hebrew calendar, right? And that is what we are currently in, right? And how do you keep this? Well, first of all, you need to know when the first of Kislev is actually declared, right? And you do that by following the apostles of Great Millstone, who are in fact the high priest of the nation of Israel today on earth. Now, on my channel, GMS LA Yashayah, if you go under my playlist, I have a playlist called GMS Sabbaths. And on this Sabbath playlist, I have pretty much all the Sabbaths, from a long time ago, right? Back to 2019, even to now. Now, if you go through the apostles, every new moon they make, or before new moon, they make an announcement, which is the beginning of that new month, which is the day that all the following 4 new Sabbaths fall upon, right? So, for example, this month, the first of Kislev, right? Like I put down here, Kislev, the 9th Hebrew month, like it tells you in Psalms 81:3, blow up the trumpets in the new moon, in the time appointed on our solemn feast day, right? Well, the apostles declared that on November 4th, 2021 would be the beginning of the month of Kislev, right? The beginning of the new moon, which indicated the new month, right? And this means that for the next month, right, the next 4 weeks, that the Sabbath would fall from Thursday night to Friday evening. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the Hebrew calendar doesn't go by Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, Saturday, right? It goes by day 1, day 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the Sabbath, okay? And the way that you do this is you got to keep what's known as or referred to as the luni-solar calendar, right? The calendar always begins on the new moon day, right? This day is, again, the day that the apostles declare, right? Don't worry about what these other websites tell you that the new moon is on. It is whatever the apostles say, all right? Because they go off of a particular calendars. I think I remember hearing one time that they compare different ones, but either way, the Spirit is upon them to declare when the new moon falls. So, that's it, period. So once the new moon is declared by the high priest of Israel, that then marks the first day. Then from then you count day 1, day 2, day 3, 4, 5, 6, and so forth, right? Now, and it goes like that, right? These yellow 7th days are the Sabbaths, okay? Now, let's go ahead and go back to the days, right? Because when you go down to a day 1, right? So right here in this tells you Thursday evening or November 4th. Well, November 4th would have been here, right? Let's pretend this is November 4th. Well, we all know that on November 4th, on sundown, like it shows you here, 6 p.m., sundown, this is when the Sabbath starts, right? Because from 6 p.m. all the way till 6 p.m. the next day, right? November 5th, this right here is what is considered the Hebrew day, okay? This is how the days are kept, right? And midday would be at 6 a.m. or basically sunrise, right? That would be midday, right? So just to give you an idea of how the Hebrew days work when you compare them to the current time and days that we are kept now under this Gregorian calendar system, okay? Now, like I said, this is the 9th month, which we currently are keeping Hanukah, right? This right here shows you how Passover is from the first month. It's the first holiday. Basically, it's our new moon. Oh, I'm sorry, our New Year's Eve. This is basically in March. Well, it goes on, right? It shows you from Nisan, Ivar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, Ulu, Tishri, Hasvan, Kislev, right? We are in Kislev, which is end of November, mid-December, right? And then the next 2 months are going to be Tevet and Shavat, right? And then Adar, which ultimately is where Purim is going to be kept, and then the Passover again, right? This is when we'll start doing. This will be in around springtime. Now, back to the calendar, right? When we look at the calendar, let's go zoom in here real quick. When you look at the calendar, right? We know that November 4th was at night, right? Was when the new moon or the Sabbath was called the new moon, right? Well, we also know, so the days is like it starts at night and then into the day of the next day, right? So November 5th, so November 4th, November 5th, right? And over here, this right here shows you November 5th, 6th, and so forth, right? So ultimately, Hanukkah starts here on the 25th day or November 25th, right? Basically, today we're here, right? On the 28th. So the thing is starting tomorrow, and honestly, you could do this tonight. You could do this next week. Ultimately, you keep it whenever you'd like, right? But ultimately, if you wanted to know from the 25th day until the 8th day, right, which would be Tevat 2nd, right, or December 6th, this would be the 8th day, okay? Now, that being said, what you want to do, general observance points, remember, these are not commandments. These are just kind of like things that you may want to do, right? This is what I do, right? It says you want to use a 9-candle menorah, right? If you don't have a 9-candle menorah, use your 7-candle menorah, but get 2 extra candles, right? Ideally, you want to get a 9-candle menorah, right? They're not too much. They're about like $20, $30. You get them off of Amazon. Don't get one that has a Star of David, right? I was asked by a brother recently, but you just want to stay away from that whole Star of David, because if it's connections to the Star of Rimfram, we don't know if it's a Star of Rimfram, but it more likely is, right? But ultimately, that's not a Hebrew thing. That's a so-called Jewish thing, right? Next, you want to light 1 candle of the menorah each day until all lights are lit up. So, for example, the first day, you're going to light up the first candle, right? And the second day, you're going to light up candle 1 and 2. And on the third day, you're going to light up candle 1, 2, and 3. And the way that you light them is you don't light them using the lighter itself, but you light the middle candle, which is a representation of Yahawah, right? The divine power. And you use this candle to light these additional candles, okay? And then you keep doing this until the 8th day when all the lights are all basically on. And that's how you light the menorah for Hanukkah. And again, you want to enjoy it with feast and mirth for 8 days. Now, what is feast and mirth? Well, that's up to you, right? Whatever you consider a feast, man, be it your sandwich from your favorite place, right? And for you and your family, your friends, or you want to go and make a big elaborate dinner, right? That, let that be a feast, right? But either way, just have something nice to eat. And as far as mirth, again, it's up to you. If you want to have a crazy party night with you and the Yahawashi, just have at it, right? If you want to have a nice, relaxing night with you and your loved ones, your family, that's another, night of mirth, right? It's basically you having a night of being happy, right? If that means giving gifts out, give gifts, right? Remember, this holiday, I myself keep Hanukkah instead of Christmas. So what I do is I perform the ritual, during this time, right? Next 8 days, and then when around December 24th, 23rd, I basically do the celebration and I give out gifts, but I do it as the gifts of Hanukkah, right? I basically redo the rituals of Hanukkah and keep the festival at that time as well, okay? So again, it's up to you how you want to do this. If you want to hold Hanukkah and all the rituals now and only now, that's up to you. If you want to do the rituals now and then do the party and the mirth again towards the end of December, so be it, right? Sometimes the Hanukkah will fall exactly upon the week of Christmas. Sometimes it doesn't. This year it doesn't, because that's just the way that the cookie crumbles when it comes to comparing the lunar solar calendar, which the Bible goes off of, and the Gregorian pagan demonic calendar, which we're currently living under. And these are just some of the things that we have to go under. Now, other things you want to do is you want to read 1st and 2nd Maccabees, right? Over the 8-day period. Now, again, you don't have to, but it's nice. So that we understand our history, we understand what we were going through, right? This is why I read that whole chapter, man, so we can understand how the temple was rededicated and cleansed again, right? Now, that being said, let's go ahead and read this right here, right? This is just another scripture that talks about how we are made. We were requested. It was a commandment for us to keep this, right? This is 1 Maccabees 4:56. And so they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days and offered burnt offerings with gladness and sacrificed the sacrifice of deliverance and praise. They decked also the forefront of the temple with crowns of gold and shields, and the gates of the chambers they renewed and hanged doors upon them. Thus was the very great gladness amongst the people, for that the reproach of the heathens was put away. Moreover, Judas and his brethren, with the whole congregation of Israel, ordained that the days of the dedication of the altar should be kept in their season, from year to year, by the space of 8 days, from the 25th day of the month, Keslu, with mirth and gladness. So hopefully this video was edifying, Akim. Hopefully this gave you a bit of information of how to keep our high holy day, Hanukkah, right, or the feast of dedication. Enjoy the next week or next 8 days that are coming up, man. Do as best as you can. Be it go all out, have a nice party, or keep it calm and subdued, right? Whatever it is, just understand that this is the time when the Lord had great mercy upon the nation of Israel, starting with Judas Maccabeus and his brothers, and also the rest of us. And this is ultimately going to happen again unto us now that we're here in Babylon the Great, that the Lord is allowing us to re-cleanse our temples, meaning our bodies, making ourselves holy and able to sanctify our bodies again for the Lord. This is happening again, people, right? So rejoice that the Lord is waking us up. He's giving us the power and the information and the dedication and faith that we need to return unto Him, right? To be that holy and sanctified temple for the Lord, right? So with all that, hopefully this video was edifying. Until next time, I want to give all praise and honor and glory to Yahawah, Bahasham, Yashayah, Bahasham, Dash, double honors to my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect. Shalom.